Hello, 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 everybody. I am Rosalind Brown of Your Wolf Guidance, where we help Black women create their financial independence map and identify the tools for success so you can live life on your own terms. I want to thank you for tuning in with us today. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another speaker that will give you the tools to be successful on your financial independence journey. So today we have a great speaker, and this topic is near and dear to my heart. As we were kind of putting this together, I'm like, yeah, many of us have experienced this, and you might not even know. So our speaker today is Shakrisha, the founder of Humble Hustle Finance. Growing up, her family faced financial struggles and witnessing the stress of uncertainty. It brought and inspired her to make a difference. That's why she launched her blog, Humble Hustle Finance, to guide others towards financial freedom and provide the peace of mind that comes with it. Through her personal finance journey, she gained invaluable insights into budgeting, saving, and investing. Along the way, she made her fair share of mistakes, haven't we all? But those experiences taught her invaluable lessons that she shares with others. When not immersed in writing about personal finance, you can find her cherishing moments with her daughter and savoring life's joys. That's what it's all about. She strongly believes in finding work life balance, appreciating the present while working diligently towards a financially secure future. Hey, girl, we on the same page. So I want to open up the floor and thank Shakrisha for joining us because today we're going to talk about financial abuse. And so I think the first thing, and we were talking about this kind of even before we started the live today, what is financial abuse? Because I think sometimes people don't even know what it is.
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me. Tonight's topic is near and dear to my heart as well. But financial abuse is basically, it refers to the use of money as a means to gain power and control over someone. So whether that's a spouse, a family member, or a friend. So yeah, some of us don't even recognize that we've been through that situation. And I didn't until I sat down and did some research on the article that I wrote about it. And I was very surprised.
Now,
I
I
too
think
was a victim of
sometimes
it at
because
one point in
people are
time.
thinking like financial abuse, I think people think like maybe a spouse who won't give you access to the bank account or people who are just actively stealing your money. But I think it's in phases. So as you're younger, it might be, a parent putting a bill in your name versus when you're like 70 and it might be a child taking over and, literally spending your life savings.
Yes, yes,
What are some of
exactly.
the telltale signs that you're experiencing financial abuse?
Like you said, there's those signs. For me, it was putting bills, or I was asked to put a bill in my name when I was growing up, which left me at the age of 18 with the terrible credit score that I thought I had to live with forever because it was bad, which led me to starting my business actually. Um, but situations like that, it could be from a spouse refusing to give another their significant other money, when they are the breadwinner, um, failing to disclose any type of assets or bank accounts and all that type of situations. Like there's different situations, so many situations actually. But yeah, it gets rough. It
And
gets
I
really
think like it's one thing when you're just starting out because when you're just starting out, you may have a few bills in your name, but hopefully you didn't have enough income where they could get anything, significant. They couldn't get a $50,000 credit card or what have you. More than likely they couldn't get a mortgage and so forth. But definitely as adults, I think a lot of times people are experiencing whether it be in a romantic relationship or whether it's just helping out family after you've identified, wait, I'm in this either cycle of financial abuse or I'm just sitting in this moment of it, what can you do in order to mentally put yourself in a situation where you're strong enough to stop it?
you have to set boundaries. But the first thing before that, you got to recognize the signs. If you, let's say I had a client, she made really good money and it was her and her mom that owned the business. But she was struggling financially. But her mom had a gambling addiction.
Mm.
And so her mom would spend her paychecks, and then she would come to the daughter, even though they live separately. She would come to the daughter and she was like, "Hey, I need like 80% of your paycheck because I did this, and this week, so you owe me." And so it left the daughter struggling at the end of the day. And she couldn't figure out why she was spinning her wheels. And I guess she had an epiphany one day and she was like, "Hey, I understand that's my mom and I'm supposed to help her, but what can I do to stop it?" And I was like, "You've already taken the first step. Like, you've already become self aware of what is going on. So now you have to create that boundary to learn how to say no, kind of cut back, especially when it's stemming from an addiction perspective." Um, but definitely recognize the signs and then create your boundaries and learn how to say no.
And I think that, I mean, a lot of us probably have experiences, especially if you're first generation, who either first generation college graduate, first generation in a professional setting, and your
Yes,
family is looking at you like you made it.
exactly.
So, you may have a lot of hands out. And I've heard people who say, it's your brother, it's your sister, you should help them out. How
Yeah,
do you even tell like third parties or family members, like, yes, I make decent amount of money, but not enough to take care of the whole family?
just like that. And it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard, but you have to learn to have that hard conversation with them because if not, you're gonna always tuck your tail and run the other way and be like, okay, and then you'll forever be in that repetitive cycle, and you don't want to do that. But you kind of just gotta stand up, and put your big girl pants on and be like, I can't do it. No, I'm sorry. I understand you're struggling. We all struggle. We all go through things, but what I worked hard for is what I worked hard for, you know. So
Now, what are the times? So, as you kind of evolve, so you get from this, I'm in a point. Oh, somebody says sometimes you have to stop that black tax. Family will bleed you dry, and I think that's really important because in other demographics, they have money that's kind of flowing down. I just read something, and she said, "I
yeah,
thank my grandmother for leaving me an inheritance," and many of us are like, "Inheritance, like."
yeah, we don't know what that is most of the time because we don't have that, like.
And
I mean, that is true. Like, culturally speaking, we are one of the largest groups to do that to our children or our family members or whoever. We and that's a generational curse. I'm working on breaking because I can't do
And is it that if you're more prone or if you've experienced that type of trauma or financial abuse in your younger years, are you more likely to experience it maybe in romantic relationships later on?
if you're not self aware. Yes, if you're not self aware of the cycle that you're in, it could be easy for you to when you see a spouse struggling, you automatically you want to help them, because that's what you're used to mentally. I gotta help them. I don't want to see them struggle. I don't want to see them down. Like, at least for me, that's what it was. And I was like, I felt like I was that was my job. I was supposed to help. I've always helped. I've always been the help. I've always picked everybody up. So if you don't become self aware and gain clarity on where you are in your life, yeah, definitely gonna repeat that cycle.
And I think you made a good point is you see someone struggling. How do you help without being the financial help all the time?
I don't know because I have a problem. I tend to want want to give my advice a lot, even though it's unwarranted sometimes. But I have to learn to pull back and say, okay, until they ask me, I got to keep quiet. I can be there for them as a friend, like for emotional support, but the financial advice I need to hold my tongue on. But it's very hard, trust me.
And then, so in terms of relationships, I think sometimes people are experiencing financial abuse, but they may not even know it. So, whether that be a romantic relationship, what are some of the signs or maybe some examples of financial abuse that people may not even realize they're experiencing in a romantic type relationship?
um, Say if a spouse comes to you and say, hey, my credit is shot. I really want this car. Can you co-sign for me? You know, that's always like, for me, I'm against co-signing at all costs, unless it's like my child or something, which she's 3, so she's nowhere near that age, but in a situation like that, co-signing for someone, getting a credit card in your name for someone, um, opening a bank account for them to deposit their paychecks
Mm.
in like those are like red flags. Red flags. Like, no, don't do that. You know. But,
And I think so. If you've made the mistake, so let's say you have made this mistake already, and you're like, dang, I shouldn't have done that. I've given too much. Someone else says that if you say no, they'll be mad, but they'll find someone else or somewhere else to get the money.
that's
So she just gives a
not
gift.
you.
So whatever you give as a gift, that's that.
Yeah.
But if you found yourself in this situation, how do you get out? How do you fix what's already occurred?
You got to have that hard conversation with them. And it's going to be hard because people tend to get an attitude, or there tends to be confrontation when it comes to talking about money. Um, but to have that hard conversation and be like, hey, especially if they're behind on something, I see that you're behind on this, like find out their plan for it and what their payout plan is. And once you get out of it, run. But for the most part, have that conversation and create some type of a plan to get out and to get on your own feet, especially if it's in a romantic relationship. Like they have all kinds of like the domestic hotline for abuse, to take you, help you go places if you're feeling unsafe. Like if a spouse is like, well, I'm not giving you any money to go anywhere, like they have all kinds of resources and help for that. But um, it's going to be hard to open up about that conversation, but try to your hardest to get out of it is what I would say. Talk to them, figure out where their mind is, um, because at the end of the day, you got to look out for yourself. So, I mean, if
And
they're already taking
that's
it, it's like
that's
they
a
can't
really
care.
good point.
Yeah,
Someone even shared she had a coworker who married a man who earned much more than she did. They lived with her parents. The husband drove her car and got tickets he refused to pay. And I mean, depending on what city you're in, they giving out tickets like that. She had to pay them from her own salary, and all the expenses came out of her salary. He wouldn't pay for anything, and she was always stressed. And so I think sometimes from a money perspective, money can give you stress that you feel in so
yes.
many different ways. How within a relationship do you have a conversation when you've probably set a precedent? So maybe things have always gone a certain way. Do you say, okay, you make three times as much as I do. We're not going to split expenses half and half or whatever that is. How do you make a pivot within a relationship, especially if it's a long-term relationship?
I would say I wouldn't bring up the fact that you make more than me, because then it's gonna become that's where you get the power struggle coming in at. They're gonna be like, yeah, I make more than you, so I need you to sit down and be quiet. You don't want that, but definitely be like, hey, we can split the bills this way and this way, and if they, find some type of compromise with the situation without letting them know that you're trying to exit. Um, and then if you share a bank account, go get your own bank account, but don't tell them that. If you see that they have a problem with you having your own account and they're trying to control what goes in and out of the account. Because these days, you don't have to send bank statements to your house. Everything can be through email, all that type of stuff. Um, but go get your own bank account and go from there. And little by little, you know, put little chunks into your own account to try to get away and get out of that situation. But they'll be
And
mad. It always leads back to them being mad. But I would rather someone be mad at me and I get out of the situation than keep being miserable and having the anxiety and depression from just being broke and stressed about money all the time. So
I'm sure some people are watching this and they're already there. So Samri, and I hope I'm saying your name right. She talks about co-signing for credit cards or loans is tricky. So for people who've already done that, so you've already been the co-signer and they had a credit card, maybe they had a store credit card in your name and they going shopping at, some local store, or they got the Visa or gas card or whatever that's in your name. And you're like, okay, well, now what? They're not paying or whatever it might be. then how do you recover from there? How do you get yourself out of that situation?
Well, legally, it's your debt since you co-signed for it, or you even signed for it. Without them being on the account. If it's in your name, it's on your credit, pretty much, and that's what the lenders are going to look at. If there's no way possible that you can recoup the money from them, you just have to go into debt consolidation mode, and you may have to, hopefully your credit is decent enough for you to go get like a debt consolidation loan and then pay it off yourself, get out of it, and run for the hills, at that point. Um, but if not, like you could try to recoup the money from them. Some family members will be like, well, I'll give you this much on it because I don't have the full $1,000. I'll give you $200 on it. Take what you can get and then pay the rest off yourself and just never learn from that and never do it again. So, yeah.
And I know you described sometimes there are red flags or subtle things that'll let you know, wait, this person is trying to get over on me. What are some of those red flags or subtle cues that, okay, this person is trying to get to that point of either they're gonna take advantage of me financially or they're looking for the opportunity to take advantage of me financially?
I think we pretty much all know when somebody's going to come with a sob story. So when you hear it coming, like, especially women, we have the intuition. We're like, oh, here it goes. When you hear it coming, stop them right there in their tracks. Like, try to avoid that conversation at all costs. If it has to do anything with, oh, I'm doing bad, my lights and my water is about to get cut off and I don't have the money for it, try to avoid the conversation. I'm not saying be rude, but, you can always try to help them, say, hey, what are you doing income wise to grow your income of some sort? Like, do you have a budget? Well, that's for me, financial talk. Do you have a budget? How can I help you with this? But never give in to them and be like, okay, I'll just give you the money for it, just because you want them to be quiet, because that's what they want. And I'm pretty sure if they're borrowing from you, they're 9 times out of 10 borrowing from someone else, and it's just a cycle they've created. But you don't want to get stuck in it. So, yeah.
And you really touched on something that something you said before is don't co-sign for anybody, but maybe you'll co-sign for your daughter in the future.
Yeah.
And someone in the chat brought this up, and I think this is a really big one because right now people are getting their acceptances. We're in the summertime, so kids are about to go to school and so
Yeah.
forth. And so your mom is probably just like my mom, and I'm spending so much time trying to protect her from
Yeah.
her good heart. And she says her mom co-signed for a student loan as a U.S. citizen for her foreign cousin, and her cousin completely denies her responsibility. So I guess this is a two-part question. One, for parents, should they co-sign for anybody, even their children, for like things like student loan debt? Um, and then I guess the second part of the question is how do we protect our parents or family members that have a good heart, but everybody knows it?
Okay. Like, from me, from my perspective, and being working in personal finance for almost 10 years, I'm setting my daughter up for success. So I won't have to co-sign for her when she turns 18. I'm And that's what I like to tell people. If you can set them up ahead of time where you can get your credit decent and in good shape, then you can add them on as authorized users onto your credit cards and whatnot, and it helps their credit scores. So by the time they get 18, they have their own credit. So they're good. They don't have to have a cosigner for their student loans and whatnot. But if not, um, your children learn from you firsthand. So if you get yourself together and you get good with money, then you're teaching them to get themselves together and get good with money, and they'll follow suit after that. Um, the second question, to protect your elderly parents, and oh my gosh, I can't believe people would take advantage of folks like that, but they do. I would hope as their child, like you would have some type of power of attorney, you know, because parents do tend to, as they get older, it's like they get softer. And at least that's how mine are. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? You were like this when I was a kid. Like, what's going on? But You constantly just have to kind of stay on them, like, hey, I'm doing okay as your child. I'm doing okay. And there's a lot of scam calls out there these days. You get a call and say, hey, your child's on the other line. They need this, that, and the third. And the parents are automatically send the money because, hey, my child's in trouble. I need to help them. And it's like, you just kind of got to over communicate with your parents. Hey, I'm okay. I don't need anything. If you get, if you know that scam is going on, at least say something ahead of time to let them know that this is what's happening. If you get a call, don't press forward or don't send any money. But I hate that happens. But at least
I
try to stay
know.
in
I'm so
conversation.
mad that she's like our cousin's living her best life for Rwanda. Girl, you gonna make us go around there and drag her back here
Man,
fast?
like what's really going on?
Oh my goodness. Now, I know one of the things your motivation to be in this space overall was based on your personal experience. When was it that you were like, "Oh, this is financial abuse to me?" Like, was it a friend? Was it a family member? Like, what did that look like for you?
I actually just discovered that probably and I've been doing this close to 10 years, but I honestly discovered the whole financial abuse thing probably like a month ago. Because I was so centered on helping everybody else and seeing it happen to everybody else. And then I sat down and thought about it. I was like, wait a minute. When I was a kid, I specifically remember my parents asking me, hey, can we put the phone in your name?
Oh my
Because
gosh.
to have a phone at home, so we need to be able to do it because our credit is bad. And I don't know how I knew at the time, but I was like, no, like I don't want anything in my name because then it's going to go on my credit. Like you said, I don't know how I knew anything about credit at that age, but for some reason, I've always had the intuition to just follow like the whole finance thing. I was like, I don't want anything on my credit. And so I think they asked my other sister. She ended up doing it, and it ended up failing. And I was like, ooh, I'm glad I dodged that bullet. But I mean, I'm glad that they asked me because they didn't have to. But it was, I remember crying about it. I was like, I don't want anything in my name. Like, that's not fair. I don't know. I don't know how that came to me that early of an age, but it did. So
Oh
crazy.
my gosh. So I know you talk about there's resources out there for people who maybe have experienced or are experiencing some type of financial abuse. Where should people turn? So it's one thing when it's kind of like blatant and obvious. So if you're in a violence situation, usually there's like the hotlines, there's people that'll help you get out of there. And that's usually the main reason why people don't leave.
They
But
feel like
what
there's
about if it's something maybe a little more subtle, like, for Samri's mom, who obviously is stuck with these student loans and there's no way for her to recover? What are some of the resources in those type situations? Or maybe it's like you co-sign for a cousin or a sister or brother or what have you, and there's no real way, there's not a hotline for my sister won't pay her car off or whatever that is. What are some of the resources that people can turn to?
that goes back to the whole debt consolidation thing. Hopefully your credit's good enough to go get that loan from the bank or and pay it off and to get started with that. And if they're credit cards, find a way to do balance transfers. There are some credit cards that offer 0% APR for 15 months, 18 months, however. Um, but to transfer that debt so you won't keep accumulating interest to something that's, lower interest rates. Um, but as far as like for the domestic, they have the hotline, they have all kinds of shelters and whatnot. They can help you. Um, and two, it helps to find someone you can trust to open up about it because you never know. They may be going through the same thing too, and they may have a resource that can help you.
Now, what are some of because I know you've worked with some people that are kind of in the same situations. What did it take for them to have their like, this is my final straw. This is when I knew it was bad. So maybe they were in a relationship for a certain period of time. What are some of the things that people or help people to say, okay, this is it. This is what I'm not going to take anymore.
What are some of the things? Honestly, I see a lot of people, they'll come to me the first time and say that they're ready. They of course they feel tired, helpless, hopeless. They have stress, anxiety, and whatnot, but they're not truly ready. You know, it usually takes them 2 or 3 rounds of coming to me saying, "Hey, I want to change," before they actually start making a move because they've taken the first step, so they recognize the signs, but it's like they kind of get scared. Like, yeah, you're saying you can help me, but can you really? You know. Um, so what I try to do is I try to encourage them and empower them as much as possible. Like, because if you can change your mind, you can change your life, and it starts in the mind because you're already feeling like it's not going to work. You're already negative. So I try to be as positive as I can about the situation and let them know, hey, in your own time, we can do it. We can get it done. You got to trust me. I've helped thousands of people with this. And if you're ready, we can take the next step. So I'll sit down with them, create a budget. We can create some type of financial plan to help them get back on their feet and create an emergency fund. Um, just pretty much encourage them throughout the process. It's doable. It's hard. I know it is, but it's definitely doable. So, but I walk with them throughout the whole process, and I try to connect them with other people that have been in that situation, so that because sometimes you get some people's stories a lot worse than what yours is, even though you feel like yours is the worst story more times often than not. But somebody's always doing worse than you, so it just takes you to open up, you know. So that's what my group is for as well, for people to share their stories. We're not here to judge anybody. We all been through the same thing, so.
And then especially from a time perspective, because I think it's harder when you're in it. So when you're in it, you're like, oh my God, I'm so deep. I'm never, if you're sitting here with student loan debt and you're, you might be in your 50s and 60s and you're like, what the heck? I'm never going to get out of this. Or maybe you're co-signing for a car you're not even driving. So now you're driving your car and you're paying for somebody else's car at the same time. How long, or how are you encouraging people along the way? So as you share stories about what other people have been through, what is realistic in terms of an expectation?
Honestly, I tell them it starts with creating a plan. And yeah, the numbers may look big in the beginning. You may be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, but we take it bite by bite, piece by piece. We're not gonna look at the $100,000. We're gonna start with $5, and whatever you can do to put towards that, it'll go down. It takes time and it takes patience. I do reiterate that over and over. It takes time and patience, but it's doable. And after a while, they start seeing the balance come down. That's when they start seeing that there is hope. Like, I can do this. And so time and patience. I stress that a lot.
Now, what do we do for people on the outside? Because like Sanri, if let's say her cousin was paying her mom like $100 here or there, her mom might not even be as upset because she's like, oh, she's paying a little bit here and there. How do we help from the outside? So maybe you have a friend that's in a relationship and you can see that they have some financial abuse, or you can see that their parents or friends or what have you. How do you help from the outside to help your friend or loved one to recognize that they're being abused?
For me personally, I'm the type of person, I'm not gonna come out directly and tell them because I'm like, they're just gonna fight back at you, and it may start an argument between you and that loved one, spouse, friend, whatever. But I like to share things I feel like would help them. Like, so say my article, I'll share that, say, hey, read over this and tell me what you think. Let's have a conversation about this article. I just want to know where your mind is. And a lot of times once they read over it, they'll realize, hey, this sounds like me. Find some type of way. It may be a TikTok video or something that relates to their situation, and that kind of opens up the dialogue for getting that conversation flowing. So,
Now, what do
not,
you do about people who say, it's not me? That's not me. That's different. I'm different. What do you do about
you
this?
can do is pray for them. They'll open up their eyes eventually because you can't make anybody change. I mean, just pray for them. Eventually, they'll open up.
Now, I know you mentioned, and especially I think sometimes it comes to head in the case of divorce where people are like hiding assets, they're hiding, what's here or there. How do you, if you either contemplating divorce, so maybe you're in a situation where I know somebody was talking about their husband makes a significant amount more, but they're
Mhm.
paying the majority of the bills. How do you get to the point where you're about to leave and you're prepping financially to walk away from that abusive type relationship?
I mean, go with your gut first of all, because that's your gut gonna tell you everything you need to know. Um, but as far as them hiding things, if it's hidden, you're not gonna know about it, but it'll come out in due time. Um, for the most part, I feel like in relationships, spouses may give some certain clues here and there that they may have something somewhere else, whether they're telling you directly or indirectly, but everybody can't pick up on clues like that. But I honestly, if you were in that bad of a situation, I would just be worried about getting out and getting out safe for me. So the
Are
aspect
there some of those
of
clues that
later,
people can think about in terms of, in the everyday conversations as you sit back and you're like, wait, they did say that. They
yeah,
did
and they'll start
mention
coming
that.
back to you eventually, because they're gonna tell on themselves 9 times out of 10. So, and I've seen a lot of situations like that too, actually. But yeah, I would just be worried about my safety at that point. Let me just get out of here. We're good. Like,
And I think that's probably one of the harder things because money is what we need for every, situation in life overall. So how do you leave when you don't have a safety net, when you're starting from nothing and you don't have enough to feed your children, you don't have enough to take care of your daily expenses? How do you leave that type of situation?
they have free resources out there, whether it's simply going to a shelter. You may not want to, but it may be necessary. They'll help you till you get on your feet. And there are companies and organizations out there that will help you with your bills until you can get onto your feet. And with the power of technology these days, you could find a job online and work from where you're at, to kind of, you may have to go to near Starbucks or something to get Wi-Fi to do your job, but you can work online to earn some type of income to help feed your family and go from there. So yeah, they have all kinds of things, all kinds of resources, but it's doable. Trust me.
Is it possible, especially when you're dealing with some type of financial trauma or abuse from someone that you love, is it possible to maintain a relationship with someone who's previously been kind of the abuser towards you?
Is it possible? I would say it is. Um, but that comes with, if you're willing to talk it out with them, you could suggest counseling to learn how to communicate with them and open up. Um, yeah, I think it's possible. It takes two though. So do know that if they're against it and you know that you've tried and tried and tried to open up that dialogue to talk with them about it, you got to do your best to either get away or start some type of bank account on the side that they don't know about. And I hate to say that, but I mean, sometimes it's necessary.
Because what would that look like? So let's say that's a parent or, in this situation, a cousin who you co-signed the student loan for. And, depending on what it looks like. So let's say it's a cousin and you're like, we gotta still go to the family reunions together or family functions and those kind of things. How do you start that conversation in a way that could be productive to keep that relationship going?
Know that there's a time and a place for every conversation and everything. Like, it's not necessary to talk about that at the family reunion. I don't care how happy you are, how mad you are, how hurt you are. That's not the time and place. Always like pull people to the side for a situation like that, especially when it has to do with money. You don't want to do that. So there's a time and a place for everything. Um, and if you've talked to them and they're just not comprehending where you're at with it, I mean, the best you could do is get out of it, pay it off if it's in your name, and never let them borrow again. I'm not saying you have to be nice to them the whole entire time or smile in their face or anything, but you know, keep your distance, but love them at the same time. Love them from a distance.
How do you prevent it from happening again? So, in the case of like your parents, clearly they have your social security number. Maybe your spouse also has your social security number, and obviously your date of birth and your mother's maiden name, all those kind of things. How do you protect yourself when someone's like, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but they already have access to everything that they would need to continue that path, and they haven't made the decision that they want to stop?
In a situation like that, I would invest in putting a freeze on my credit because, and when you do that, they have to verify. Of course, they're going to verify anyway because it has to do with your credit. But if your credit score is frozen, nobody can access it. So they're going to go to a whole nother level of trying to verify that it's you when it comes to financing something. So I would definitely suggest putting a freeze on your credit score. So nobody can get into it. Nobody can go get a loan. Nobody can, sign up for a credit card. So, and only you'll know that you have that freeze until they do that, but they can't figure out why they keep getting denied. And they know you have good credit, but you know why. Yeah.
We talked about, the financial abuse that happens between maybe family members or child towards parents or parents to child and so forth, and maybe even in a romantic relationship. But I think sometimes we might even miss it among friends. And I think sometimes we know the friend that's always going to be quickly to say, "Oh, I got it, I'll pay." And then there's usually the friend that's like, "I ain't got no money."
Usually the one that's always trying to be like, oh, I got it. I just want to see everybody have a good time. Help everybody out. But that was the hard, and I still struggle with it to this very day. I have to learn how to say no. I have to learn how to, even though I feel bad for their situation and for them not being able to afford something, I can't save them at the end of the day. Because a lot of times, if you save them once, you're going to end up saving them twice and then three times. And it's just going to be over and over again. So I have to learn to keep my mouth shut.
And I guess that's harder, especially in a group of friends. So if you have your normal friend group, maybe you all went to college together or high school or whatever that is, and there's one person that usually like never has it. How do you have, is it a group conversation where you say, "Hey girl, you always come and you don't have anything?" Or, maybe you might know that their situation is just different. Maybe they have a job that doesn't pay as much, or maybe they have more obligations that they need to help out with. How do you have that conversation in terms of what is fair and what makes sense, and then what makes sense as a relationship or friendship going forward, especially when it's like a group of people? So it's not necessarily a one on one. Maybe they go on vacations and they didn't bring their share, or maybe they just paid the deposit and they're like, yeah, I don't have enough to actually go. Or maybe they were one of those folks who said, I'm gonna go and never paid their share at all, that kind of thing.
For me, if it were a group thing, I would make sure to reiterate in our group chats or wherever, however I communicate, that everybody needs to have a set amount, and for since I'm the finance person, I try not to relate it to me so much, but it just happens like that. Like say I were in a group and we're all going on a trip. I hold the money for everybody. So I'm checking off who paid their portions. We put it in an account where everybody has access to it, everybody can see it. So and we know that we're not going to take any money out of it, but we're going to put in. But I go through and check off everybody that has paid their part. And at the end of the day, when it's time to go on that vacation, if you haven't paid your part, I'm sorry, you just can't go. And it may be hard to leave that one friend behind, but it's either you're going to be stuck paying for them, or you let them stay home since they couldn't pay for it, and you go and have a good time. But those are the type of hard conversations that you just got to have with your family members and friends. So, I mean, money's not talked about enough, so it's very uncomfortable when people do approach somebody about money. But you gotta do what you gotta do. Or you can go this time, but maybe next year. I like to set vacations like a year ahead of time, so everybody has more than enough time to put in their amounts, little by little. So by the time a year comes, you should be fully paid. We should be good. So there's no excuses.
Now, what if someone comes back, and I think often the times this will happen is when people then they want to portray as if they're the victim. So when you finally like put up your boundaries and you're like, I cannot help you. I cannot help you pay your rent another month. I cannot help you pay your cell phone another month, whatever it is. How do you respond to that loved one that's saying, I can't believe you would let me and my kids end up on the street, or I can't believe you would let us starve. How do you even respond to situations like that? I think sometimes that's almost the way that you get bullied into doing something.
Yeah, they'll definitely try to guilt trip you in. For me, and I'm really easy to get guilt tripped. I hate to say that, but I am. I just I feel what I feel because I'm gonna feel bad for a while, but I feel what I feel, and I just have to move forward. Like I do understand that you're going through a hard time. I get that, but at the end of the day, there's just no way I can help you. You know, I mean, I feel like if you say that up front, there won't be any back and forth at the end of the day. They may say something once or twice, but with you keep reiterating that I can't help you, I don't have the means to help you, or I've helped you in the past and you just didn't pay me back, I think that they'll kind of let it go from there.
I love I think we can usually see certain portions of abuse, but then there are certain things that we can't see. And I think sometimes you might be the saver. So maybe you've done everything right and you're the saver, but then you have people that want to force you to spend more. And I think that's a whole nother kind of level. So maybe you're going out to buy a car and they're like, wait, you getting that instead of a Mercedes? Or you're going to buy a house and they're like, you're not spending this amount versus this amount, or they want to know why you don't have this brand of purse or whatever
Right.
that is.
Well, they'll be like, I thought you didn't have any money. Well, it's not. It's not.
And
But
so, how do you have those conversations where you almost feel like you're being bullied to spend more? So maybe your friends are going on vacation and you're like, I can only afford to go on this vacation. They're like, I know you got it. Come on, just go. Like,
just because I got it don't mean I want to spend it. That's how that conversation is going to go. Like, I have my budget and you have yours, and that's just not within my budget. If it throws me over budget, I'm definitely not going to go because I'm not the type of person. I don't like spending money. But at the end of the day, every now and then, I do go through my little phases where I feel like spending, but it's all being headstrong. It's all in being headstrong. So, and I'm not a materialistic person, so none of my friends you know, try to bully me into like, oh, buy that Gucci bag, no, because I go to Walmart and get a purse and I'll be just fine with it for the next 5, 6 years. I don't have to spend all that money on that. But it's all in who you surround yourself with too at the end of the day. So,
and then what about children? I think sometimes people are very concerned. We had, the student loan conversation, but concerned about either their kids not being made fun of. So you don't want your kids to not have the name brand shoes or the
yeah.
name brand clothes, or not be able to go on like the school trip or those kind of things. And so it may not be even necessarily as much as abuse, but you just don't want them to have that feeling of not having or not being a part of that. How do you get yourself strong enough to say no in those moments where they're like, everybody's going, everybody has these, people are making fun of me because I don't?
I mean, you just kind of got to explain to them, hey, just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean we have to. You know, at the end of the day, I can't afford it, and I'm not going to go in debt doing it. And you can explain that to your kids; they'll understand. You could break it down into their terms, where they'll be like, okay, well, mom says she can't afford it, or I can get it next time, or I can get it next Christmas, and they'll eventually forget about it. But for me, it's all about communication. Just like you communicate with that spouse, family member, or friend, you got to communicate with the kids too. openly, especially about money. And in a situation like that where they feel like, oh, Jimmy has a pair of Jordans, but I got a pair of Walmart shoes. Why? Well, they both do the same thing, but at the end of the day, the Walmart shoes are a lot cheaper than Jimmy's shoes. Like they understand. Your kids, so
I think this is a really
like
good comment. Somebody said kids need to learn to deal with disappointment. I
they
think
do.
sometimes it's hard to be the person to disappoint. And I read a quote today. It said kids probably can hurt you more than anybody else. And I think depending on the type of upbringing that you had, if you grew up and you didn't have a lot, you remember that kind of experience in school where people made fun of you, it might
Right.
be harder to overcome that feeling and get to the point where it's like, okay, now I know my kids are experiencing that same level of someone's picking on them, someone's making fun of them because they don't have. Maybe it's a conversation of incorporating the kids into the overall planning. What does that look like, especially when you're having those conversations with people?
I would say let your kids in on your financial situation. They understand. I mean, over time, they'll learn more and more as they get older. But I would say, like, from as early as 5 years old, kids are like sponges. They just get stuff, and that situation, your money situation starts with your parents. So if they see you doing good and you talking about money, and you sitting down to create a budget, eventually they're going to want in on what you're doing. Especially my daughter, she likes doing everything I do, so she's going to learn eventually. But so you sit down and you just talk it out with them, open up that dialogue, and where they feel comfortable saying, hey, I feel like I would get bullied if I didn't buy this, and sit down and say, hey, this is what we have, this is what we're able to afford. you know Talk to them about bullying, per se, and they'll be able to put it together. And it's going to be hard for you, but I would rather my kid understand me and they be disappointed than to try to go into debt trying to keep up with the Joneses just because Jimmy got Jordans, like so
And I
disappointment is
love this comment. Someone says, as adults, we need to coach kids into being able to deal with life. There are times where they will be disappointed and they need the tools to handle their emotions.
exactly.
I think
And it's
it's
okay to be
funny because,
disappointed, you know.
yeah, and I think it goes both ways because as kids, sometimes they've never been disappointed. Like people are stretching themselves, working multiple jobs, all those kind of things. And
They
then
know
they
you're
grow up
gonna go
to be
out and get
adults.
it. Yeah. They know
And then they
mama's
get to
gonna
be
get it for
adults
them, daddy's gonna
who
get it
don't
for
know
them.
how to not. And so maybe they're abusing themselves because they're racking up credit card debt and all these kind of things because they just don't want to not have. They don't want to see what people have and not be a part of that too. So I think that's a really good point to make because sometimes as parents, you're trying to make sure you're kind of protecting them from the world, but really you're not preparing them
Right.
from the
Not
world or for the
realistically
world at the same
anyway.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a really good point. It's hard because you don't want to be the person to say no.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, you'd rather be the one to say no than they try to go out and learn to get older and learn, oh, I got to do this just because they're doing it. Especially with social media these days. They see stuff on social media all day long and they feel like everybody else's life is a lot easier just because people are posting the good stuff. You got to explain to them at the end of the day, this is just the internet. Like they're going to only post what they want you to see, so it goes from there. So,
Yeah. Somebody said this is a time where kids' social skills are at an all-time low.
very,
With more social media, it's funny. It's kind of going in the opposite
very,
direction of like
and
we
it's,
were.
it's sad, but it's the way of the world. So,
Yeah, that's kind of where we are at the moment, and we'll have to see what we can do, in the confines of our own home in order to make children stronger. I think, if you're a parent, if you're an aunt, uncle, grandparent, and you're trying to make this life or kind of make this protective shell for those little ones that you love, and you're trying to figure out how, without sacrificing your future too, which is really important.
you're right. That's exactly right.
Now, tell us a little bit about if people are saying, "Yes, I would love to work with you." What does that look like? How does one onboard or work with you if they're saying, "Yes, I've experienced some financial abuse," or maybe I think I might have experienced some financial abuse? What does that look like?
Well, they can always contact me. I have a group called Mindful Money Moves. There we talk about, we're open about money. We talk about our mistakes, we talk about our wins. They can learn from there. I'm open to one-on-one coaching, even though I haven't fully rolled out my program yet. But I'm open to one-on-one coaching and helping them through. But I would like to start them with, getting into the group and opening up, and there are ways to open up without even letting people know who you are, in the group. So I think a lot of people don't know that either. But you can post things anonymously. Um, and somebody may have a similar situation or may have known somebody that have had that situation, and they'll answer you back, and conversation just grows from there. So, yeah.
I love it. And I want to thank you for being with us today. I know you have a guide. I'm going to drop that into both chats so you'll be able to see these, your resource after the fact as well. Just a great resource overall as people are trying to figure out, what tools, what is the kind of step by step
Right.
of that safety guide. I know it starts with like just assessing your situation, establishing your support network because sometimes you're like, do I have anybody? And
You'd be surprised.
securing important documents. So it's a good kind of step by step guide, and so I'll make sure that everyone has that as well because it's really important if you're thinking maybe I am, what can I do? How can I move forward from there? So I want to thank you for sharing that with us as well. So you'll have that after this chat. Any closing comments for the ladies?
Um, Hopefully, everybody keeps their eyes open. If you've been a victim, just know that there is hope. You can change. You may not feel like it. You may be stressed, have the anxiety. You may be embarrassed to come forward, but I mean, the only way to change is to speak up. So whether it's they send you a chat or send me a chat, we're open. So,
I love it. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. And until next Monday, I want you to make it a great day and be sure to like and subscribe and share. And we'll see you next Monday. Have a good night.